Good morning or good afternoon, geometry students. I just wanted to make a quick video on special right triangles because I know this is something that we can easily forget. So special right triangles are 45, 45, 90 right triangles and 30, 60, 90 right triangles. The ratios, as you see in front of you, for a 45, 45, 90 is x, x, x square root of 2. Now, of course, you know that in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, it's isosceles because two angles are equivalent. So in other words, two base angles are equal. Therefore, two sides are equal. So the legs of the right triangle, x and x, those are equal. Those are both legs. And then x square root 2 represents the hypotenuse. Now, that does not mean that you will always have the square root of 2 in the hypotenuse. That doesn't mean you're always going to have the square root of 2 on the legs. That also doesn't mean that if you multiply the square root of 2 by another number that it won't cancel out. So the square root of 2 sometimes, most of the time I think you'll see the square root of 2 somewhere involved in a 45, 45, 90, but not always. This is just to get you started. If you get a 45, 45, 90, you can always set the hypotenuse. Like if they give you 15, you can always set 15 equal to x square root 2 and then solve for x for the leg. Now in a 30, 60, 90, similarly, there's a special relationship between the legs. Now the shortest leg is x. We know that that's the short leg. And the medium leg is x square root of 3. That's the, I guess, medium leg as we coined it. And then the hypotenuse is always double the short leg. So double meaning 2 times whatever the short leg is. That's the hypotenuse. I'm going to pause the video for me, and I'm going to draw a few examples, and then we'll work with these special right triangles. All right, so here are a few examples of a 45, 45, 90 triangles given different things. So in this case, they gave you a hypotenuse, and there's a special trick when you have a hypotenuse. So when you're given a hypotenuse, you can divide the hypotenuse in half. You could divide it by 2, and then just multiply it by the square root of 2, and you'll have the side. So 16 divided by 2 is 8, and then multiply it by the square root of 2, and that's the side length of your 45, 45, 90 triangle. So again, I just divided 16 by 2, and I got 8, and then I multiplied it by the square root of 2. And that was my leg. You can also do this a different way. So when you have 15, for instance, 15, if you divide 15 by 2, you get 7.5. And we, in mathematics, do not have decimals in front of radicals. So you can't just divide by 2 here and then get 7.5 and then do 7.5 square root of 2. That's not correct. So we have to approach this differently. So again, when you have an even number, it's very easy, straightforward. When you have an odd number, you have to do a little bit more work. Well, think about it. Technically, you're dividing 15 in half, right? And then you're multiplying it by the square root of 2. Does 2 go into 15 evenly? It doesn't. So your sides would be this, 15 times the square root of 2 divided by 2. That would be your side for both of these legs in a 45, 45, 90. Another way you can think about it is think about the ratios in a 45, 45, 90. You have x, x, x square root of 2. They gave you the hypotenuse. They gave you 15. So this is another way you can think about it. So 15 has to equal this ratio right here, x times the square root of 2. So you can simplify for the x, divide both sides by the square root of 2. The square roots of 2 is just one whole. So you have x equals 15 square root of 2. But as you know, you cannot end, your answer isn't simplified if you have a square root on the denominator. So we are going to rationalize the denominator by multiplying by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. And remember, we also do that to the other side. But since this is another value of 1, we can just bring down our x. But there is a consequence here. 15 times the square root of 2. And then underneath we have the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. Let me write down the first. So we have 15 times the square root of 2 So 15 square root of 2 is the numerator. And then as I said before, the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 we know is equal to 2. So the square root of 4 is the denominator, so we know that that's 2. Do you see how we got the same thing this way as we did this way? Now let's move on. Instead of working with the hypotenuse, let's work backwards. Let's see if they give us a leg. So if they give us a leg in a 45, 45, 90, we know that the other leg is equivalent, so we can say that that's 5. And remember the ratio. X, so the leg, and then the hypotenuse is the leg times the square root of 2. So in this case, we have a leg that's 5, multiply it by the square root of 2, and that's your hypotenuse. But that only works for a 45, 45, 90 triangle. That's why they're called special right triangles, because they have a special relationship. Now, in the same manner, let's say we have a leg that's square root of 7, then that means the other leg is the square root of 7. Oh, but what do we do here? The hypotenuse. Well, all you have to do is remember that the hypotenuse is x times the square root of 2. In this case, our x is the square root of 7. So plug in the square root of 7 here. So the square root of 7 times the square root of 2. And the square root of 7 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 14. Now, if you can rationalize the square root, by all means, rationalize it. But if I break down 14 to its prime factorization, I just have 2 times 7. I have no doubles. I don't have anything that I can actually bring out of the square root. So my hypotenuse is the square root of 14. And that is it, my friends. Remember I told you at the beginning of the video that sometimes you're going to have the square root of 2 in your answer, but sometimes you won't. And see how it basically transformed the square root of 7 times the square root of 2 to the square root of 14. And that's how you solve 45, 45, 90 triangles. We're going to move on to 30, 60, 90 triangles in the next few minutes. Or on the next slide. All right, so now we're looking at 30, 60, 90 triangles. Let's say they give you the short side. Then you could easily find out what the hypotenuse is in a 30, 60, 90. Because in a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the relationship between the short leg and the hypotenuse is that the hypotenuse is double. So if the short leg is 8, that means the hypotenuse is 16. And I'm going to write down the ratio at the top just so remember. So we have our short leg, and then we have our medium leg, and then we have our hypotenuse. All right, so if our hypotenuse is 16, that means that our medium leg is going to be whatever the short leg is times the square root of 3. In this case, we have 8 for our short leg, so our medium leg will be 8 times the square root of 3. Now, if they give us the hypotenuse, we can divide by 2 to find the short leg. So if we have 20, we know that the short leg is 10. And then if we know the short leg, we can just multiply it by the square root of 3 for our medium leg. So in this case, we have 10 square root 3. Now, if they give you the medium leg, you can set the medium leg equal to x square root 3 and then solve for x to find the short leg. So let's do that. So in this example right here, they give us a medium leg. And the way I know that is the medium leg is always opposite of the 60-degree angle. Or you can just look at where the short leg is, which is always opposite of the 30-degree angle. And then the hypotenuse is always opposite of the right angle. So the medium leg is the side or the leg that's opposite of the 60-degree angle. Okay, let's get to it. So we have 3 square root of 6 equals, and our ratio is x square root 3. Now, remember that x is being multiplied by the square root of 3, so we can divide by the square root of 3 on both sides. Square root of 3 divided by square root of 3 is 1x, or 1 whole. Sorry, x. And then the square root of 6 divided by the square root of 3 is the square root of 2. But we still have this 3 being multiplied to it. So we have 3 times the square root of 2. I can't simplify that anymore, so that's the short leg, 3 square root 2. And remember that the hypotenuse is just double 2 times whatever the short leg is, which is 3 square root 2. 2 times 3 is 6, so the hypotenuse is 6 square root 2. Now, if they give you a fraction, don't fear. This is the short leg. So all I have to do is multiply this by 2 to get me the hypotenuse. So I have 1/4 times 2. And remember, when you multiply by a whole number, you can always put a 1 under it. And just multiply the numerators and then the denominators. So here we have 1 times 2, which is 2. And then 4 times 1, which is 4. And you can reduce that to 1/2. So the hypotenuse is 1/2. Ooh, so then how do we find the medium side? Well, the medium side is just the short leg, whatever the short leg is, times the square root of 3. So in this case, the short leg is 1/4. Just multiply 1/4 times the square root of 3. And the same concept is here. Under the square root of 3, you can put a 1. And then multiply 1 times the square root of 3, which is the square root of 3. And then underneath you have 4 times 1, which is 4. So the medium leg is the square root of 3 divided by 4. You guys have an Edulastic after this. You can check your answer up to 2 times. You guys are welcome to work together, but remember that you're still responsible for your own learning. So if you're asking for help on every single example, that's probably not the best thing for you. You have to try this on your own, and if you need guidance, that's fine, but try not to ask for help on every single one. Try to struggle with it and figure it out on your own. Have a good day, guys.